So because it has become untenable to continue saying they are doing nothing, there is now a new narrative that you are being fed on. Now the new narrative is this. It is their responsibility, we should not be praising them. And now we are falling prey to it. There is no place, I've not seen any government workers ask to be praised. I've not seen any president ask people to praise them for what they are doing. But now you are being made to believe that, you know what, someone has sat down and asked themselves, how do we run away from this conversation about what they have done? So let us tell our people that it does not matter. After all, it's their job. It's true, it's their job, it's actually true. But even at home, a reasonable man, when their wife serves them food, they say thank you. Not because it was not their job. A reasonable wife, when the husband provides, they also have the decency to say thank you for this bread today. So when someone is now moving you away from decency so that it helps their narrative, you must be very, very careful. And there's something about what you read about government promised 150 promises.
241.
241 promises. They have been able to only do about 24. So my question is always this. Between 24 that have been done and the over 200 that have not been done, which ones are the majority? The majority are the ones that have not been done, right?
Yes.
But the ones who are speaking about the ones that have been done always have them to mention. The ones who have 200 things to pick from never have anything to point at. And I ask myself, if you have 240 things that have not been done, for goodness sake, you can pinpoint at least 30. When I'm speaking, and I was able to talk about probably about 10 things, and my brother talked about a few others, I would want us to have a decent conversation where you are able to also raise up and say, what you've mentioned are just part of the 24. Now, let me give you a list of 120 that they have actually not done. But the problem is, the conversation is always like this. They have only done 24. They have not done 240. But nobody pinpoints the 240. And I've always told us in this panel that anytime you see that a point is able to excite your emotions, but it cannot narrow down to any fact, then know that that is propaganda. Because there is no way I can have 200 things to pick from. Look at it. Today we have over 7 opposition principles, right? The objective of an opposition leader is to take over the government from the current sitting president. One of the ways you do that is to highlight what they have not done. If there are 200 things to pick from, how come the only conversation you want to have is pointing at the things that have been done? You are talking about the gap in SHA. You're talking about the gap in infrastructure fund. You're talking about the gap in something else. Why talk about the gaps when there are 200 things that you can just pick and show people that they have actually not done? Why point at the gap? You can point at the reality of real projects. So the moment we run away from those kind of, let's not become easy and gullible to be bought into propaganda. And let us also not become the type of people who want to keep the politics of us versus them, because that is where the problem starts. When you listen to me, but in your heart you are telling yourself that you belong to opposition, no matter how long I speak, in your head you are seeing someone who is supporting government. In your head you are seeing someone who is an apologist of President William Ruto. In your head, and that blocks you from the truth. Because when I tell you today that Honorable Rigathi Gachagua was impeached on the account of tribalism, if you are you believe you are in opposition, you will think I'm against opposition. Because I'm saying something that is unpalatable to your emotions. But as unpalatable as it is it true or is it false? It is the truth. And that is why when my sister here, I'm sure my brother here said he wants to take her to Nyanza because she's from the eastern region. I'm sure that she must be very agitated when the president says there is no road that goes to Honorable Kalonzo's home. The conclusion would be that the person saying it is against Kalonzo Musyoka. But if we want to be objective, we ask ourselves, is it true or is it not true? Okay? And when someone says, President Ruto today is building a road that is heads to Seikuru, which is the home of the former Deputy President Kalonzo Musyoka, when I say that, you are going to be ached and think that I support President Ruto. I don't support President Ruto. It is the truth. So for us to make sense, let us first of all move away from the legacy politics of us versus them. When we move away from that, we will be able to look at things more objectively. When we look at things more objectively, we will be able to get a better leadership that we actually deserve. And that's why I like the person who asked, should we be able to elect people based on their promises or based on
the performance?
On their performance. And I'll be able to say both. Because there's a promise that can be made and both you and me can see that this is hogwash stupidity. It's not true. Okay? And also we must ask ourselves, who is the person making the promise? So when we look at the person making the promise, whereas we cannot know whether they are saying the truth about what they will do, but we can be able to say, have they had some responsibility before? So we'll be able to look and say, Honorable Matiang'i has had some responsibility before. How did this country change? Courtesy of him. We'll be able to say, Honorable Kalonzo has had some responsibility before. Yeah? He's been in government for over 30 years. So how did this government change because he was Minister of Foreign Affairs? How did our parliament improve because he was Deputy Speaker? How did this country change because he was Vice President? Then we'll be able to cascade downwards and ask ourselves, okay, now we are having the others as well. So when we get to that fact, we will be able to make reasonable decisions. When we avoid those emotions, we will point at every of them and ask, this is Eugene Wamalwa. How many portfolios has he held before? So when he was Minister of Justice, so how did this country change? How did our judiciary transform? This Eugene from the Western region, how did Nzoia Sugar become better when he was in government then? How did Mumias Sugar then become better? Because he was part and parcel of the government. We'll be able to look at all of them, including people like Maraga, and ask ourselves, apart from annulling a presidential election, so how did our judiciary become better? Were cases expedited in perfect time? Were people able to get justice quicker? That way we will be able to get the right leadership. But for as long as we keep the narrative of us versus them, and before you listen to anybody, you have already decided where you are. By the way, there's nowhere called you are in opposition or in... Where is that? Where is the door that leads people to I am in opposition? I am in government. Thank you.
Thank you. A round of applause for Mr. Mundalo. No.